When you realize you're closer to the back end than to the front, you begin to wonder about whether or not your life has meant something or not, particularly in comparison to other men. I don't know if that thinking is very healthy, but I must admit I began to think like that from time to time. And I would suggest to you that anybody who gets into their 60s and 70s is secretly looking for validation, and they want to be recognized for what they've done.
Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo, using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. Hey, we're going to be doing live Q&As second Thursday of every month in 2023. There is a link in the show notes to sign up on Eventbrite. We'll answer any question you have, and happy to chat with you. So, do you currently have your family working in your business, or do you plan to? Today, we're going to talk about how to do that and what you need to consider to have a profitable family business. It's hard enough to survive one generation, and to be able to pass it on is a gift. The ability to work and play together is nice because your board meetings can be at exotic locations and maybe they're tax deductible. Not to mention, I hope you can trust your family members and know they will show up. Of course, everyone needs to want to be part of the business, and they need to do their part. We're not talking about having family on the payroll who don't pull their weight. It all comes down to having a plan, and today we have an expert to join us to share that. Tom Hubler was one of the few professionals addressing family-owned businesses in the U.S. when he began in 1980, and now has counseled 500-plus private businesses to date and inspired countless family business leaders through his speaking engagements. Tom is a published author, professional speaker on family business, and owner of Hubler's for Business Families. He has a long-standing dedication to helping families of wealth and family-owned businesses succeed. Having seen firsthand the challenges family businesses face, he also shares ways to grow through them or prevent them in his book, The Soul of Family Business. Let's meet Tom and learn from him. Answer Man, Thomas Hubler. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks, Rocky. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to learn from you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your business?
Well, in terms of my career history, I started out as a family counselor and did that for a number of years. And then I got a fellowship to study organizational development. And that's how I got into doing the consulting work. And I taught the family business management class at the University of St. Thomas for 10 years. It was supposed to be a 2-year deal while the professor was on a sabbatical, but he never came back. And so I did that for 10 years, and I'm the founder of the Minnesota Family Business Awards. And I spend my life basically, working with family businesses and writing articles and things like that. And the other thing I'm really proud about, I just should mention, I have 7 grandkids.
Ah, very nice.
Which is really a big deal for me.
I can imagine. So now, was this St. Thomas down in the Caribbean?
Are you kidding? It's St. Thomas in Minneapolis and St. Paul.
So it wasn't warm.
It's University of St. Thomas. It started out, as a small liberal arts Catholic college, and has sort of morphed into a university and with all of that. And has the St. Paul campus, which was, I went there as a freshman, and then it has a Minneapolis campus now where the business school and the law school is located.
Nice. So we're here to talk today about family business. A lot of small businesses are family run. Mine is family run, 2 generations.
Yours, really?
Yeah, it's myself and my daughter. My wife refuses to join us at the moment, but eventually she will, I think, at some point.
I'll talk to her.
Well, she honestly, for her biggest qualm, I think, is she doesn't want all the revenue coming from one
source.
She likes to diversify the income and say, this way we don't have to worry about it. I'm like, we don't care about more sources of income anymore. We've been profitable. We don't have to worry about it going forward, but we'll see.
So I should mention my kids have worked for me. This is a long time ago. And my wife currently works with me part-time.
Nice. So
we've got our own little family business.
And what about the grandkids? Not yet? Or
the grandkids are, the oldest is 26 and she's a history teacher. She's just graduated with her master's degree in education from the University of Wisconsin and is now teaching history, American history in O'Fallon, Illinois.
Give her a couple of years.
She's smart enough. She's really smart. I mean, so, and I always thought of her, originally I think she was going to be a psychiatrist or psychologist or whatever. So, she has the potential. She has the personality to be able to do that.
So what makes a family business successful?
Basically, it's having a plan. Family businesses, basically are busy doing, seriously, they're busy doing what they do and they forget about the importance of planning. And so one of the things, when I was a junior in high school, I worked at a grocery store, a family business grocery store that was owned by 6 siblings. And the oldest of the boys was the president. And he was a very jocular guy. And he always talked in riddles. And one day, in those days, you had to stamp the price on the commodity or whatever it was. And I was busy stamping 303 tins of peas. And he came down the aisle and he said to me, "What's your plan?" I said, "I don't have a plan. I'm busy putting peas on the shelf." Leave me alone. And he said to me again, "What's your plan?" I said, "I don't have a plan. I'm busy putting peas on the shelf." And he said to me, "A plan that isn't working is better than no plan at all." And he walked off and I thought, oh, what a dumb thing to say. Well, anyway, I've used that my whole career. And so having a plan is really, really, really essential. And you have to have a plan for your success. You have to have a plan for managing differences. You have to have a plan for what happens when you inadvertently step on each other's toes. It's impossible to live in a family with people you love and not inadvertently step on each toes once in a while. So family businesses that forgive each other are, much more successful than the ones that don't. And learning to communicate and manage your differences and learning how to listen. Listening is the communication skill we use the most, but have the least amount of education. And learning how to listen and be open to outcomes, not attached to them. And the other one that's really important is like if you and I were in a business and we're having a dispute, the R of an acronym is called Remember to Look for My Loving Intentions. And nobody gets up in the morning and says, how can I go down to the company and screw up my company or screw up my family? But there are differences that we don't manage. People don't manage them very well. And as a result of that, they get into trouble. And there's you're getting the full catastrophe here. But anyway, I tease about this famous theory that nobody's ever heard about. And Rocky, I'm going to share it with you today. It's called Hubler's speck of dust theory. And are you familiar with it?
I am not, but I have an idea what it might be. I
am just shocked. Hubler's speck of dust theory is this little difference between us. And I think, well, I better not bring that up, because if I bring that up, it's going to upset our relationship. So I'll let that go. So then there's another little difference. I think, no, I'm going to let that go because, it's a holiday. We're all going to get together with the family. And if I bring that up, it's going to upset our family. I'll let that go. Well, what happens is people inadvertently create the problem they're trying to avoid by not talking about their differences. So having a plan to talk about your differences in a constructive, positive way, in a win-win way, rather than win-lose, is critical and essential. So those are, and then having a business plan. Like when you're an entrepreneur, you can get away with having a business plan in the back of your head. But when you have multiple owners of a company, you have to have a more formal plan.
And I don't disagree with that at all. I've seen a lot of family businesses. Some are successful, some are unsuccessful. There's a lot of ego involved at times.
Yes.
Within the people. And, it's funny you say you need a plan. And I tell everybody that. I mean, like, you need a financial plan.
Right.
So that we know where we're going and we can measure against it. You need a life plan. Like, what's our exit strategy? What are we doing? Because if we don't know where we're going, we're just going to get tossed into the wind, whichever way it goes. Once we're clear, it really takes all of the shiny objects away, and it becomes easy to say, is this on the plan or isn't it?
And the other part of that related to the plan is to be a purpose-driven organization or purpose-driven person. And being able to do that and manifest that in your family and in your business is really, really important, which relates to the notion of planning.
So one of the things that I notice, a lot of times people will build a business, and when they have younger kids, they're hoping they'll take over the business. I think in the old days, if your dad was a carpenter, you became a carpenter. And that was just the way life was. In today's world, if you look at what's going on demographically, there are a whole bunch of people in the baby boomer generation who kids don't want to take over the business, who have no interest whatsoever in doing anything with it. Do you just let that go? Is that like, how do you integrate kids in, or where is the boundaries?
The primary thing that parents are responsible for, in my opinion, is helping their children develop an understanding about what their gifts are and what their purpose is and what they're here to do. There's a guy named Greg Lavoie who wrote a book called Callings. And in there, he's got 19 or 20 questions. And his second question is my most favorite question, which is, what's the one question you were born to answer? And the responsibility of parenthood is to teach your kids what their purpose is and what's the question they were born to answer, and help them wrap their lives around that. That's what's going to create happiness. And if that includes working in the family business, then that's the icing on the cake. I mean, for those who want to work in the family business. I had a prospective client one time where he never asked his kids to join the business. And one day the kids say, well, how come you never asked us? He said, well, I don't want to do to you what my dad did to me, which was to say, he said, when I get out of the service, this is after World War II, when I get out of the service, I'm going to go into the diplomatic corps. And the dad said, well, you can go to Europe. I'll send you to Europe for the summer. But when the summer is over, I want you back here in the company. And of course, the guy came into the company and he was an unhappy camper for, any number of years.
And I'll be honest, I was surprised my daughter came into the company. I didn't expect that at all. That was her choosing to be part of it. And I was very intentional in how we created that relationship. Because that, to me, it was more important that we have a good relationship than she be in the business.
Correct. And that's really true. And I think it works. You and I were talking before we got started about the critical nature of building the emotional equity of your family relationships. not only for that purpose, but the research is that family businesses where there is strong family bonds and ties and harmony are more profitable. And so it has a dual effect. And then the other thing that I think is critical, and part of the reason I'm all excited about this, is I'm moderating a panel tomorrow at the University of St. Thomas on next generation. And the idea here is you want to have a reciprocal commitment to each other's success, which creates a team. People, when they're committed to helping each other be successful, that's what creates a team.
And I'll tell you, because if you want your kids in the business, I think as your kids are growing up, you have to teach them to work together.
Yes.
Because I think too often there's so much family rivalry, especially amongst brothers or maybe amongst sisters, that it comes into the business in adulthood.
I was with a family today where that's the real issue. And the older sister has left the family as a result of a difference of opinion about what happened in the company. And it's really a tragedy. And the grandparent or her parents have not seen the grandchildren for the last 5 years. And it's just very, very, very painful. And part of it has to do with the competition between she and her brother. And her husband and her brother are also competitive for being the leader of the company, and it created a disaster. And I think I mentioned to you earlier that my children have worked for me, and this is a long time ago. And the office manager asked me if my daughter Kirsten would be available or interested in working as a receptionist and sharing it with another high school student. I said, I'll check. Well, it turned out she wasn't available. So I said, well, what about my son, John? And she said, well, he's a little young. And I said, would you interview him? She said, okay. Came home and I said to John, there's this opportunity down at the company and here's what it pays. And he got all excited because it paid more than fast food. And then I said, now, John, I'd like to suggest you wear a shirt and tie as you go out for the interview. And so anyway, so he got down to the company and he got hired on a 1-day probation. And he did light typing, answered the telephones, and corrected the tests we used. But the day that it was announced that he was going to be working there at a staff meeting, I began to choke and do all the things I've seen my clients do. And I was saying things to myself. I hope he doesn't embarrass me. I hope he doesn't act down here like he acts at home, and so forth and so on. And on the home front, my daughter Kirsten, who was not available to take the job because she was going to the University of Minnesota in a special program to get high school minority students into science careers, and being paid to go there. And we'd come home and she'd say, he took my job. I said, what do you mean he took your job? You weren't available. And I thought, holy smokes, and so it doesn't make any difference who you are or how smart you think you are or whatever. It's the overlap between the family and the business systems that create the tension in a family business. And you have to create a balance between your family and your business if you're going to be successful. Like for you and your daughter, to continue to maintain not only your business relationship where you work together, but also your father-daughter relationship.
And that has been the thing. They cross over. And so making sure that we look at, because we do look at it wider than just the business part of it, right. And making sure that there's a good energy level in all of that's involved. We have a local business here. They are a 9-figure business. So considerable sales, large corporation, all family owned. And they have a rule that once the kids graduate college, they're not allowed to work in the business. They have to go out and create success somewhere else before they will allow them to interview and come back into the business. Right. And I think that they're a couple generations out, which makes it much, much harder. When you start getting multiple generations out, you've got a whole bunch of different values too that come into it, because kids marry other people and then they have kids, and now, someone else is.
It gets very complicated.
It gets very complicated.
And from my perspective, part of the way to deal with that is to have what I call a family participation plan. And a family participation plan is a plan about what's the criteria for entry into the business. And they decided they have to work someplace else. Then what's the plan for career development? What's the plan for leadership development? what's the plan for if you don't measure up? And what's the plan for compensation? That's one of the most difficult issues in family business, is this issue of compensation. And do they get paid too much or too little, that type of thing. And so all of that is included in a family participation plan.
There's a whole lot of planning going on here. And I think this is probably why you say this. It's always easier to prevent a problem than to try and fix one.
Yes, that's true. It's much easier to do that. And that's one of my sayings, is it's easier to prevent a problem than try to fix one. And I say to clients, I'm available for a second opinion or for a 10 or 15 minute phone call. I said, I tease about this. I say, every time I call my attorney, he charges me. I don't charge for that. I want you to call me up. I want you to help, I enjoy brainstorming and helping develop second opinions. They're going to be a win-win to help you achieve whatever your goal is. So I think it's really important to do that.
We do the same thing for our clients. We have an unlimited access plan because we realize if they'll call us and ask us up front, we can go, yeah, that's not going to work. That doesn't, the numbers don't work.
Right.
Whereas if they come back to us with the problem, then it becomes hours of fixing. And we don't charge for that because we realize we want to remove all the friction so that we can solve the problem up front before we create it.
Yes. Yeah, you're right about that.
And that's a big part of it. What are some of the biggest issues that you've seen with family businesses?
Well, one of the things in my book, it's called my David Letterman list of the 10 obstacles to succession planning. And it's a lack of expression of feelings and wants is one. Entitlement is another. And when I first started doing this work, people would say to me, I bet you meet a lot of younger generation adult children that were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. And I say, no, that's not really true. And then they say, well, who do you meet with entitlement? Well, the people I meet that are entitled are the owner entrepreneurs. And they sometimes say, I'll do whatever I want to do. It's going to be, I'll do, what I want. And the rest of it's going to be up to you. You can do whatever you want, but I'm going to whatever. And so they're entitled. Another one is, if things are going to get better between you and I, Rocky, you're going to have to change. And
yeah, that never works out well.
And then another one is the big C, control. Entrepreneurs are very successful by their very nature because they're controlling, but that's their Achilles heel. And then number two, I've mentioned before in our conversation, is the lack of forgiveness. And I want you to speculate on, what do you think number one is? If you think about all the issues in family business.
No plan?
No, that's close. No, it's the lack of expression. The lack of expression of appreciation, recognition, and love. And the senior generation basically is looking for validation, but they will deny to their dying day that they need that or care about it or are interested in that. And the younger generation, adult children, love their parents, but take them for granted, but don't tell them how much they appreciate what they've done and how they love them. And it works in reverse, where the parents do the same thing. They love their kids, but they take them for granted and don't tell them how much they appreciate what's going on and the fact that they've made a commitment to the business. So that's what I tease and say, that's why I have work, is because people don't do that. There's a quote from the movie The Bridge on the River Kwai. I don't know if you're familiar with that film. It's a 1957 film that starred Alec Guinness, who was the commandant of British prisoners of war who were being forced to build a bridge for the Japanese. And at the very end of the film, he's reminiscing about his career and talking to the Japanese colonel the day before British commandos are going to blow up the bridge, and he's unaware of that. And he says, I've been in the service for 28 years. I don't think I've been home more than 14 months that whole time, and I wouldn't have had it any other way, and I've loved India the best. But when you realize you're closer to the back end than to the front, you begin to wonder about whether or not your life has meant something or not, particularly in comparison to other men. I don't know if that thinking is very healthy, But I must admit, I began to think like that from time to time. And I would suggest to you that anybody who gets into their 60s and 70s is secretly looking for validation, and they want to be recognized for what they've done. And so that's why that number one is so important, I think.
I was reading Sam Walton's book, who created Walmart. And
Okay.
Sam was an amazing, like the way he went about running a store, building a store, the curiosity he had. He spent more time in his competitors' stores than in his own, learning how, 'cause he thought they all knew something that he didn't. He wanted to learn it. At the end of the book was basically him pretty much at his deathbed, realizing, I didn't spend enough time with my family and my kids. And they all got billions, but he realized he might have made a mistake. And I think that is important. You do need to spend the time, and it's not all business. There's a mix to that.
Allianz, the German insurance company that's his U.S. headquarters is here in Minneapolis, did a study about 10 or 15 years ago that indicated that the non-financial aspects of inheritance are 10 times more important than the financial aspects of inheritance. So the idea of family rituals, family gatherings, father-daughter relationships, having fun, doing things, all those sorts of things, family rituals are what really makes a difference. And it also partly has to do with your legacy, the idea of legacy. There's a woman who used to teach at Harvard. Her name is Laura Nash, who defines legacy as your gift to the future to help others find success. And so the idea is that you want to be able to focus on your legacy with your family and how you're going to be remembered, as opposed to always working.
And if you are always working, most of your kids are going to be like, I don't want to be in that business.
No, and I don't know who that person is anyway.
And I don't know that person anyway. Yeah, there's that too, right?
It's really sad. It's really sad, but it happens.
How do families usually handle the transfer of ownership from one generation to the other? Do they buy it? Do they earn it? Like, how does that all work out?
It all depends. I mean, that's a complicated process that has to do with what are one of the things I mentioned is called inside out succession planning. So it has to start with your purpose. What's the purpose and what's the plan and what do you want to accomplish? And then the technical professionals, the lawyers and the accountants and the wealth management people can come up with a solution that will best help you achieve your goals. And it could be bought, it could be sold, it could go into a trust. The priorities. The first of the year, I think there are 5 priorities in terms of the question you've asked. The first one is to decide whether you're going to have another generation of family members working in the business. The second priority is the financial or the economic security of the senior generation, and there's no plan that's going to be successful. The third is the equitable treatment of the children. And the fourth is the minimization of estate taxes, which oftentimes people think about what's the reason to do estate planning. The reason to do it is estate taxes. Well, that's on my true false test I used to do it. It was false. It's mostly false because you need to do it for other reasons. And then the fifth priority of estate planning is family awareness, so that the parents develop a draft with their advisors, and then at a family meeting, when the family is gathered together, the parents and the professionals go over what the plan is, and the parents get feedback from their adult children about what the plan is, and then they go with their advisors and finalize what the plan's going to be, that type of thing. So it's all a matter. It's all a matter of planning.
Yes, it is, and everyone loves to work in the business. Nobody wants to work on the business, which is what the plan is, and which is what yeah. And what is that quote? Failing to plan is planning to fail. Right.
Yeah, that's it.
Is there anything else that we should have touched on with regards to family businesses that we didn't get a chance to?
Well, the other thing we should talk about, maybe we sort of brushed up against it, is there are 3 types of meetings you need to have in family-owned businesses. And you need to have shareholder meetings, and people who are having a family meeting, basically they adjourn the meeting and then the shareholders get together. And the main job and the only job of the shareholders is to elect the board of directors. And so the first kind of meeting is a shareholder meeting. The second kind of meeting is a board meeting. And then the third type of meeting is an employee meeting. And then lastly, there are a family meeting. And the purpose of family meetings is to deal with the overlap between the family and the business system. And again, the research is that families that have family meetings periodically to manage this boundary between the business and the family relationship are much more successful. So, taking time again the other thing I want to mention to you is that earlier we were talking about the overlap between the family and the business system as a source of tension or problems in family businesses. And in order to, it's both a successful thing and a difficult thing. And when they're overlapped too much, that creates the problem. So the idea is you need to create balance between the two systems. And the way you create balance is to have structure and formality. And a client said to me, Tom, we don't need all that structure and formality because we love each other. And I say to them, Rocky knows it's because you love each other that you need structure and formality. And so family meetings are a vehicle for the development and the integration of the structure and formality that's necessary to keep a balance between the family and the business.
And there is so much. I mean, we've just kind of started peeling the onion here. There is much more to this. And I think you have to look at your family dynamics. You have to look at the type of business. And, the larger the business, the more the opportunities for the kids. But at the same point, they've got their own lives, so they've got to figure out what they want to do. And it really depends on what the family looks like, and then what all the other siblings and then their spouses. And you got to sit down and think it through.
You got to have a plan, Rocky.
You got to have a plan. Well, and you got to have a plan for profits too. Everything needs a plan. That's just the way it works. If people would like to learn more about you and your work, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, I have a website, HublerFamilyBusiness.com, and I have a book called The Soul of Family Business, a practical guide to family business success and a loving family are things. And then they can call me on the telephone. I return phone calls.
Old school.
Yes. That I get these texts all the time. Oh God, I hate that stuff.
It's always important to realize how people want to communicate.
I know.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Rocky. I appreciate it.
Everything comes down to having a good plan. Yes, I know we all want to work in the business and we're too busy to work on the business, but taking the time up front and having a plan will save you tons of time and heartache and can help you to be more profitable. I can't tell you how often we have to deal with breakups and expectations after the fact that make us unhappy because we were not clear up front. Not to mention, it's so much worse to deal with when it's family. Instead of more resources, you need to have a more resourceful family help you to build the business. And remember, let's focus on the bottom line.
If you'd like for us to be a part of your profitability journey, we have different programs available ranging from do-it-yourself to one-on-one coaching. Our course, The Profit Blueprint, teaches you everything you need to know to transform your profitability. There are 3 different tiers ranging from DIY to done with you so that businesses of all sizes can get the support that's best. Join the waitlist in the show notes to get more information and be a part of the next cohort. If you want a done-for-you service, you can hire us as your Chief Profitability Officers. We only work with a handful of clients, so they all get our full attention. We work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $10 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on our calendar for a good fit conversation to see if we're the right people to support you and how we can help you.
This episode of the Profit Answer Man podcast is brought to you by SMBpodcastnetwork.com. The network is a collection of podcasts and shows from around the internet which focus on bringing you interviews with amazing guests who share actionable advice, ideas, and information for small and medium-sized business owners and entrepreneurs. Visit www.smbpodcastnetwork.com to find more great shows and easily subscribe to be notified of new episodes. It's a great way to discover quality content. If you've discovered us via the network, then I hope you enjoy today's show and will consider subscribing directly so you never miss our episodes. Remember to check out my other podcast, Richer Soul, where we talk about how to live the ultimate life and be the best business owner you can be. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.